Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today, ink comparison day. We're going to take a look at two inks from Diamine. The first one is Oxblood, and that's going to go up against Writer's Blood. Two very similar colours, but with quite different properties, and really enjoyable inks to use. I do like using both these inks. Join me now down on the mat. We'll take a look at the inks, we'll look at the swatches, bit of chromatography, we'll look at some writing samples, and then I'll give you my thoughts on these inks. Welcome down to the table. Here's today's inks. We've got Diamine Oxblood and Diamine Writer's Blood. Both obviously by Diamine, both 30ml bottles. Just on this side as well. There we can see the whole thing. Like these plastic bottles, really nice. I like these 30ml. Lets me get loads of different inks without spending an absolute fortune. Move those out of the way. And what I'll do is fetch in my swatch cards. So we've got Diamine Oxblood, Diamine Writer's Blood. Looking at these, and I know these aren't perfect ways to look at an ink, but you can get a rough idea. Very, very similar in colour. I think we've got a little bit more of a reddy colour with the Oxblood, and it looks a little bit more purpley with the Writer's Blood. If we turn them over, we've got Oxblood and then we've got Writer's Blood. Look at the chromatography. Aren't they different? Although they look very similar when you see them on that swatch. Very different makeup. We've got a grey line which looks quite solid down where I wrote, so hopefully there's a little bit of water resistance in that grey shades. But as we go up, and the Oxblood, we're seeing some peaches, then we're going into more browny colours, and yeah, brown maybe tending towards, is it maybe a dark crimson as we go up. But with the Writer's Blood, we've got an awful lot of that grey, then we get straight into pinks. Very, very different, and that's what I like when I look at these chromatographies, just to see how something which, when you see it in written form, looks very similar, but how different they are in their makeup. And talking about writing, let's fetch in the notepad of testing. A5 notebook, Oxford optic paper. Today's ink holder, because I'll be dipping a pen for writing with, is, well, I think it's meant to be a dragon or a crocodile. I can never tell. I always like to refer to it as my dragon. The first ink we'll write with is Diamine Oxblood. So I'm going to take the cap off, and here's the pen I'm going to use, a Serendipity dip pen with a broad Yoho nib. So in we go. So give it a good dip, then I scribble off on a bit of waste paper just to get the worst of like any ink drops on it, and then we'll write. So we've got a Diamine Oxblood, Serendipity dip pen. Looks like the colour's changing as we're writing, so we're taking off even more of that excess ink. Do my sentence. There, we're out, so I'm going to have to re-dip. This is one of the weaknesses of doing these tests. Because I'm using a dip pen, I can't guarantee the amount of ink that will be on the nib. I can't even use the same pen and fill with ink, because then, you know, there's a lot of swapping between them, and again, washing out the nib and cleaning it. I do have some other paper I'll fetch in a minute where I have used the same pen, but on different paper. So anyway, that's that writing sample. You know, it's hard to judge the wetness because, as I say, I've dipped it. I'm going to just step away, and I'm going to give this pen a good clean before I come back and write with the other ink. So I've given it a good clean. I'm just going to show you this. What I do is I pull out the nib and feed, and then I make sure I try and dry it all off as much as I can to get any excess water off. Same with the feed, I'll try and dry that. And then in here, this is where the feed goes. what I do, I'll just scrunch it up a little bit. Hopefully I've got all this on camera. If not, it'd be a boring section, won't it? Anyway, so I dry that. So I've dried the nib, I've dried the feed. Now I put it back together again. This is always the fiddly part for me. I'm not very good at things where it's doing practical stuff. So get them lined up and in she pops. Okay, second thing, well, not that one, that's the one we've already done. Writer's blood. There we go. So we'll dip it in. Exactly the same process. I dip it in. I try and take off any excess on my scrap paper. This one, I think I got a lot of ink on there. But anyway, let's see what it writes like. So we've got Diamine, Writer's blood. In the Serendipity. Dip pen. And my sentence. I'm just going to do my swipe test down here. I do find that Writer's blood is an awful lot wetter than Oxblood. Just clean that nib off and pop the lid onto this ink. Gary is a clumsy person, so I always make sure I pop the caps on as soon as I can. Looking at this, the Diamine Writer's blood is still wet. It needs a few more minutes, I would think, to dry. What I'm going to do, just pop it over to the side. Whilst it's over there, I'm going to fetch in my 52 GSM Tomai River paper. Now what I've done is I've written with the same pen with both these inks. The pen I've used, Waterman Karen, medium 18 karat gold nib. Beautiful pen, beautiful nib. And look how well it performs. I mean, look at the match as well. I think this Oxblood and this Marine Amber, very, very nice, very pretty together. You know, I'm saying, you know, I've called out, it's a good colour match. Ink flows well, gives a nice line. Don't see much in shading, I don't expect it. The nib's nice. You know, we can look down here at the bottom, you can see how wet it is. You know, like these little swatches here, what I do there, you can actually see what I'm doing. So that's going across. Then I do exactly the same and swipe it. You can see how wet they are. If we jump back, get to the right page, there we go. This is the same pen, the Waterman Karen, with Diamine Writer's blood. We can now start seeing a difference. The Writer's blood, an awful lot wetter, an awful lot darker. You know, it looks, I'm not going to say it looks black, it doesn't. It looks a very, very dark, nearly black crimson. Whereas with the Oxblood, we're seeing more in the way of colour coming through in the writing. Not sure which one I prefer. I think if I was pushed, I actually prefer the Oxblood in this particular pen. Although I do find that Writer's blood, especially with a pen with that I'm having some issues with, this is an ink I find usually works quite well. As I say, you can see here, exact same tests, just how wet it is. Let's move that out of the way. I'll fetch this back in. That Writer's blood is still a little bit on the wet side. You can see there, it's still shining. Now, I'm going to just use this pen, seeing as I've got it out. How much do these inks cost? This is really good. This is a good way of being able to talk about the cost of things. I bought the Diamine Oxblood 30 millilitre bottle from a store in Australia. It cost me $9 Aussie. That works out at 30 cents per millilitre. Not bad value. Most of my other Diamine inks, including the Writer's blood, I bought from a store in the UK. And to avoid paying, shipping costs, they have a set amount of money you've got to spend and you get free shipping. So I combine a lot of my purchases together. By buying it from the UK, it cost $4 Aussie. That's more than half the price of buying it in Australia. and it works out at 13 cents per milliliter. Not everyone can afford to bank, to save up and to buy a load of stuff from the same store in the UK. So if you're having to pay shipping, this will affect this cost, but the cost I'm giving is without postage. I still had to pay postage for this Oxblood. Again, I bought a number of items which spread the cost, and again, this $9 does not include the postage. So that's something to bear in mind. You've got to look where you're buying things from and how you can buy them. What are my thoughts, though, about these inks? As I say, I like both of them. In this Waterman Karen, I do prefer it with the Oxblood. This Writer's Blood, is it? Oh, yeah, it's dry now, so I can risk popping my pen down there. A lot darker. I say, to my eye, it looks nearly black. You can't see much in the way of colour. For a dry writing pen, for, an extra fine pen, I think Writer's Blood may look really well. I'll have to try that. I've not really tried it. Maybe that's an experiment I need to do. I'll make a note after this video to do that. The price, that's one of the things, I do need to think about. I do need to look at. What I tend to do now, as I say, is buy my inks from the UK. When you're saving that amount of money, you don't have to buy many to save a lot of money. And like my Diamine inks, I've got about 50 at the moment. So, if I've saved $5, save for 40 of them, that's a big saving. All by banking my money and using it when I'm purchasing other things, usually pens, so I get that free shipping level. Of the two, if we look at the bottles, I don't know if you can see the ink levels, not easily. It's a shame. If you could have seen the ink levels, I've used more Oxblood than Writer's Blood. I think with the Writer's Blood, because it's so wet, that a lot of my pens, they're broad nibbed. You don't see much in the way of colour, so I don't tend to use it. Love both of them though. I think they've both got different uses. I mean, certainly it's an interesting colour, and both are very similar in terms of colour. So they're my thoughts about Diamine Oxblood and Diamine Writer's Blood. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. What are your thoughts on these inks? Have you got them? Do you have them both? Do you find that both are enjoyable? I've really enjoyed using these. I like the colours, and I've got to be honest, I think I'd be hard pressed to try and pick a favourite between the two. Please drop your comments down below. Let's kickstart the conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.